So let's start at the start. Tell me about your early influences musically and before Killing Joke.
Yeah, well, I'm six. So I was born in 1960, at the end of 1960. So I grew up in the 60s. Probably like you. You must be around the same age, I would have.
56, yeah, I was born.
Yeah, younger. Wow. Right, there you go. So, um, what, you are 56 or
No,
you
no,
born in?
I'm 65. I was born in 56.
Oh, okay, right. So, yeah, it's a big difference, isn't it? I found people who are born in the 50s and people who are born in the 60s, even though I'm right at the beginning of the 60s, it's a kind of different mindset a bit. Um, but yeah, I love growing up in the 60s. Um, I spent the early years in Slough, near Slough. Um, my mum was a model, drove a Mini Cooper. Dad was a bit, and there was a wild time. I remember very happy days. And I suppose the first big influence musically was my dad bringing Sergeant Pepper's back in '67. I think that just completely absorbed me, blew me away. Cut the things out, stuck them on my jumper, went around the playground, and I played it to death. And then my mum was playing, all the '60s pop stuff, Sugar Sugar, the Trogs, all of that in, and began my sort of love of pop, really, I suppose. And then in my young teens in the '70s, I progressed into Led Zeppelin and Sabbath and the heavier rock, a little bit of prog rock. I kind of avoided a bit of that, I did buy Supertramp Prime of the Century, um, but I couldn't quite get my head around King Crimson, and certain things. Spirit were a bit tricky for me, but Hendrix I love. And then I suppose, but Alice Cooper, glam, all of that, was really kicking in. I was in the uh, Glitter fan club, I just loved it.
Yeah, me too.
And I just loved all of that. And then, I suppose I was starting to get into singer-songwriters like Dylan a bit with Desire and things like that. And then suddenly I got to 14, I was going out to clubs, to discos, getting into, I became a soul boy, and I
Me too.
got rid of my budgie jacket and Brutus shirts and start wearing, tight red corduroy jeans and winkle pickers and Bowie bags and going to discos and jazz. But first disco I tried to go into was in Reading, and my mum was ready. They were playing Rock Your Baby, George McRae in the club. Guy at the door said, "You're not old enough." And I said, "I've never been before." He goes, "You're not old enough. Come back here." And I had to go to the phone box in the foyer, phone my mum up, and say, "Can you pick me up?" They won't let me in. And that haunted me ever since. I love it though. Sometimes I mix it in with Suicide. Um uh, well,
Frankie
a word.
rock and all that stuff.
Oh, Frankie Teardrop, or something else, Sherry,
Sherry, yeah.
and yeah, I love detailing that out now, and yeah, an amazing track, and gave me a taste for wanting more. And then I was living at my dad's in London, and then I was going to Global Village, Countdown, Crackers, uh, Lacy Lady, all those places, the Royal Sea. Had a little posse of friends, and we just go to all the Soul Boy, even the all dayers. I take the Brit funk thing. So my favorite of that genre was kind of Fatback Band meets James Brown.
Can I just tell you, my favorite, I think the funkiest track of all time is "Do the Bus Stop" by the Fatback Band.
incredible. I remember it gives me shivers thinking about that. And Yum Yum, wow.
Yeah.
That captured the vibe for me as 76, I think. I wasn't a first wave punk, I was still a soul boy. Many of the London first wave punks have been soul boys, but I kind of missed that very first wave and caught it at the end of 77 a bit. And some of my soul boy friends, you start seeing people coming to the clubs dressed in bin liners and jelly sandals. And people say, "Oh, you got to come to the Roxy. It's this new club. It's punk and it's all this rock." And I was like, I don't really. So that's not really what I'm into. And then eventually I went down to the Vortex, I think was one of the first, the big crackers. And that was a Tuesday night on Monday night. And that just blew me away. And then I really started getting into the records, the Damned, New Rose. Those were my first punk singles. And Pistols, of course. I was very much a Pistols. In London, there was a big divide between you were either Clash or Pistols a bit, Unless you're Don Letts and you could straddle both,
Yeah.
But I was definitely Pistols and Clash, and but I love the Clash as well, of course, and I loved that energy of it and the look of it, but very quickly I joined a band. I was supposed to go to art school, joined a band instead, and ended up doing a 32-day tour with the Adverts and the Saints, where we were third on the bill, and then I had a residency at Eric's in Liverpool. And I sort of cut my teeth with that. I had a couple of other sort of punky type bands, and then I actually got spotted by Jock McDonald and joined the 4B2 with Joe Iden's brother. And I pretended to be Sid's brother, and we got a big deal with Ireland and made a bit of money. And record kind of grazed the top 40. And it was actually Vivian Goldman, the great journalist and a very old friend of mine, describes it on her Wild Dub compilation. It's the first proto-world dub punk mashup because it had this disco bass line drums, and then Lydon's dad playing fiddle, is this art fiddle player at back, and and then some sort of post-punk guitars. It was pre-pill, but it was a little pill. I mean, Lydon could just produced it. So
were you friends with John?
I became friends from that moment with him. Right. And I was living in a bedsit in Earl's Court with Alex Patterson, and John was around the corner in Gunter Grove, and he invited me round, and I've gone round with Jock and Vivian, and I started going out there every night, hanging out. And he was in this sort of siege mentality. It was just after the Pistols had split up. He was starting to put Pill together, and he had Keith in the basement, and he'd have his little soiree every night. Don Letts, Vivian, loads of cool cats be coming, but he couldn't really go out because he kept getting attacked. But we just get some Red Stripes in and a bit of speed and stay up this up 7 inches like till 4 or 5 in the morning, and then crawl. And that was my art school education, was Gunter Grove, really. And very quick, I'd already just started Killing Joke then. So that's really informed what we were going to do with Killing Joke. And I made sure we had a lot of disco and dub elements in the rhythm section with those early singles and throughout, really.
I was going to say, what really fascinates me about listening to the wide range of stuff that you've been involved in is that it's this kind of, you occupy this no man's land between kind of commercial music, popular music, and kind of outsider music. And I think that's a really cool place to be, personally. Yeah.
Yeah, it's very tricky to balance those out, and find that equilibrium between those, polar opposites sometimes.
Yeah.
But I think people accuse me of being a bit genre blind. And
I'm genre too, yeah.
And that was a little more unusual back then, but now everyone's a bit like that, you know, and everybody takes a bit of this and a bit of. But I was doing it quite overtly from an early age, and you know, not even considering it too much. It was just where I was coming from, really, and you know, and if I found, of course, at the time, you know, when we were doing Psych or early Killing Joke disco bass, I thought I wanted to sound like Bernard Edwards, you know.
Yeah.
So whenever I played it back, I was like, oh, close but no cigar. But then the punk fans would go, wow, that's fucking amazing. You're my Jimmy Page or something. Yeah, yeah. Somebody else's context. My mistakes became their favorite bit. You know, I've sort of had to learn that over a long period of making records, that actually it's the mistakes that count.
Oh yes, I completely agree. I mean, one of the things that really influenced me in the 70s was Brian Eno talking about the beauty of randomness in recording. Just one sec. I've got a workman in. Hold on. Okay, so you just press the doorbell, yeah? Cool. Yep. This is all part of the flavour of the podcast. He's like,
Okay, right. Hang on. Someone up. Are you done? Finish. Hang on a sec, Martin. I've just got cleaners just.
giving. This is great.
Oh, it's old, isn't it?
Podcast gold.
Oh, really good. That's good. Yeah, we are. You've done some great ones, man. Really enjoyed.
I know they're good, aren't they?
And yeah, really great. And some
Johnny Visconti's my favourite, I think.
well, who?
Tony Visconti was my
Oh,
favourite.
yeah, Tony. Yeah. You know, I started this magazine last year in lockdown called MU.
All right.
And we've done 3 issues now. It's sold them all out, and incredibly, hang on. Right, hang on. Okay, Marcy, you still there?
I am.
Okay, sorry about that. Right. Right.
All grist to the mill.
Talk about.
I was talking about, you were talking about your latest projects and your fanzine and all that stuff.
The plans and magazine move. Yeah. Yes. So
That's a nice room.
Yeah. And so that's the magazine. And managed to get this, and yeah, he's such a dude, isn't he?
Yeah. Yeah.
You think records he's made, just
Oh my God. As I said to him, 12 out of my top 20 records ever were produced by Tony Visconti, you know. So, you know,
Yeah.
and not just T-Rex alone, if that's all he'd ever done, you know.
well, yeah. I was gonna say it's not even it's the T-Rex as well, isn't it? Yeah. But yeah, I love Visconti, what he does, yeah. And it's great still making records now, isn't it?
Yeah, I've got a question for you. I've got a question. What is your favourite, most commercial record that you think you've done?
That's well, probably like you, I don't spend a lot of time listening to the records I've made.
I don't really.
There's a great interview with Scott Walker on a documentary, and I think he just finished Tilt or something, and he had Simon Draper as head of Virgin down to play it back to him. And Simon goes, he plays the first track, and Simon goes, it's amazing, Scott. It's just a little loud. Do you think we can have the volume down a bit? And Scott, oh, you know, the thing is, Simon, you know, I spent 3 years making this record, 4 years. He goes, 12 hours a day, 7 days a week. We go, and this is the only time I'm going to ever listen to it now it's finished. So, you know, and I'd rather play it loud. Things like, yeah, go ahead. So I'm a bit like that. Once I made it and listened to it, I'm like, I totally let go and let's get on, move on to the next one, you know. So I don't spend a lot of time reflecting on what I've done in terms of what's favorite. Possibly you know, I'm not. That's another great quote. Harry Dean Stanton. So I was asking him, in some Tarantino movie, he plays the father, and somebody had asked a question to him and said, "Do you think that character ended up the right way? Do you think the story it always should have gone another way, or this and that?" And he just went, "I don't give a fuck." Nor do I. Some of my favorite records are some of the least successful ones I've made.
Right.
But obviously, the most successful ones, like Bittersweet Symphony, I listen to those when they come on the radio now, and I'm, God, I pinch myself. I just think, wow, that's so amazing. Not only because it's just a solid gold, fantastic record, but because of the process. Richard hated that when we started recording, but banned me from recording it or overdubbing on it. And he'd really just fallen out of love with it. And I had to do so much of it with stealth and cunning and round the corners, and then represent it to him when it sounded amazing. After I'd even got strings on it, I had to ask the strings section to do me a favor and let me do the strings with that invoicing and all this stuff. But in the end, when I played the hit to him, and he was like, "Oh, it's incredible." And then he kind of fell back in love with it, and then it became his biggest hit. And I just think, wow, all those extra miles of a broken class, like what it's like as a producer. It's not even about whether you're right or they're right. It's just about getting the record right, and getting the music right. When it does come together, and you've and it works, it's an amazing feeling, isn't it? It really is.
But I always say to people that there's a point in recording when you're writing in the studio in particular, and you're making the arrangement up on the fly with a solo artist, and you've got the bare bones of the song. But then I always say there's this incredible moment where it stops sounding like a recording, starts sounding like a record. And it's a beautiful thing. And it's, like you, I've been doing it for nearly 40 years, well, more than 40 years. And there is no magic formula. It's everything I do is bespoke and has its own issues and benefits and surprises and detriments and everything. So what I love about your work that you've done historically is just the sheer range of stuff you've had a go at. And obviously now you say you just do stuff. I think it makes sense to me because I'm looking at, obviously the Orban System 7 but then you've done stuff with like, the Charlatans and Banana Rama. I mean, you won't put the Charlatans and Banana Rama in the same sentence normally, would you?
No.
And Vanessa May,
Yes.
like that. So I've got a lot of respect for that kind of eclecticism.
Thank you. Well, it's starting to do. I did a lot of classical, contemporary classical crossover, so I could get the experience with the orchestras because I wanted to get into symphonic music. Which finally actually wrote a symphony that's still almost there. There's a YouTube of a work in progress of it that's going down well, but I recognized I needed the experience. I'm
just gonna let the builder in. One sec. This podcast is just going to be riveting. But I would say, yes. So we're talking about the eclectic nature of your work.
Yeah, diverse. Yeah, I mean, I love diversity. I embrace all those contradictions, but as you know, if you're going to go into a different genre, effectively, it's a lot of work. It takes a lot of time and experience to understand what that is, even as a fan, but I've always been a fan of pop. And then I got into the 70s. I really got into sort of electronic music, avant-garde, early post-punk electronic, the normal Daniel, you had him on, and, all those pioneers, Low, Eno.
Yeah, big thing.
We signed to EG Records with Killing Joke rather than go to Polydor, Virgin, or Island, all of which I would have been really happy to be. But we went with EG because Eno was on EG.
Yeah, exactly.
And that was it, And I have a great experience working, producing and writing with Roger Eno, Brian's his a couple of albums ago for him and getting him on some Orb recordings. And that was a real moment because me and Alex used to listen to his music and Brian so much when we were in our early 20s and teenagers. It was so important for us. And still his conceptualizations and ideas and philosophies with music are still astounding for me. And, I still...
Well, he was an original, wasn't he? And the weird thing is, later this afternoon, I'm going to his house.
Oh, great.
He's hosting an Ivors Academy, which I'm on the board of. He's hosting an Ivors Academy Music Declares Emergency panel about what the music industry can do for, the climate emergency.
Right.
I don't know what. Stop touring probably is the answer. I don't know. Are you involved? Sorry, are you involved in any kind of activism, climate change, or otherwise?
Oh, I've been in Killing Joke for 45 years. I mean, Killing Joke been banging on overtly about climate change and the sort of news and the political conundrums. So, I mean, I'm very much, I'd probably describe myself as a, anarchist with left-wing leanings, a utopian. I just made a record with Penny Rimbaud from Crash, and and so artists like that, I mean, Penny especially, they really kind of have helped me navigate my political, personal, and universal politics, but also kind of combined with a healthy respect for spirituality, whether it's Tibetan Buddhism or Shivaism or things like that, which all kind of give you an informed sense of responsibility. And I mean, I've done some support for certain other groups. I've support Extinction Rebellion, or even though I'm not sure about the name, but I like what they're doing. And I like.
You're not super glued yourself to the M25 yet, then? No.
Oh no! But I love the who were the people who were drilling holes in the M25 and planting flowers and trees and yeah, I'm very supportive of all of that. And I'm just a little bit cynical about personality politics. Party politics seem a bit redundant today as well, a little bit. But I think everybody has to address those questions now. I mean, we are like on the ticking last few seconds. And I've been doing a lot of work with a guy actually, Dan Morell.
That's right. I'm doing a little bit of work with him, as you know. So, yeah.
Hi. Balance project, and before that, he came up with the carbon neutral thing and planted a lot of trees. I'm a bit of the opinion the best thing you do for climate change is plant trees. I planted a lot of trees in my place in Spain and around and with Dan, and I mean, anything like that. I'm also interested in native traditions, shamanic psychedelics. All of those, I think, help give you a deeper awareness and understanding of the fragility of the balance of the planet. And, I'm totally,
Well, I'm saying Martin Youth Lover for president. That's what I'm saying. We need somebody like you, definitely.
I think maybe Gina Birch from the Raincoats. Let's make her president. I think she. To me, yeah. Or you're pretty organized. I'm a bit too sort of lost. I do a lot of painting and I write poetry. So I'm like this dreamer who's got his head in the clouds most of the day. So I probably wouldn't make a great politician. Possibly, I'm happy to sort of, do some Darsham with them. Yeah, there are a few good people out there, and you know, it's such a tricky one, isn't it?
It really is. It really is. So what's next for you? What are you up to at the moment? I like the idea of this symphony thing you were talking about.
Yeah, the symphony, and that's called Symphony of the End of the World, and it's got the Syrian National Orchestra on it. I recorded at Abbey Road. I'm just getting a symphonic symphony in the tradition of the Rites of Spring, and so I've got a friend who's interested in staging it at the Berlin Opera. He's a director there, Jonathan Moore, and some great plans for that. But obviously, it's a huge, epic work. It's going to take years and years for it to come to fruition. I've just done a symphonic work with Penny from Crass, Corpus Day, and that's out on one little independent in November, and that's Penny Rimbaud and Youth album. And that's me doing symphonic soundscapes with him doing sort of tone poems, so John the Baptist like. And he's a great orator for that. And
where's the money come from for this? I mean, it sounds like an expensive business.
All the success I've had, I've plowed back into building studios, giving me time to do projects that don't have big budgets, but things I really want to do, whether it's Penny or Crash remixes or whatever. So I have a few studios in the house here, 2 or 3 assistants now, and I just spend a lot of time making records. I'm just wrapping up Laura Logic from X-Ray Spectre's new album, just starting Gina Birch from the Raincoats, her solo album. Did a Vivian Goldman debut album this year, which has gone down really well. The big one this year is U-Roy, which is...
How old is he now?
He died of COVID last year.
That's right.
But it's Santi Gold, Jesse Royal, it's Ziggy Marley. It's a big album. Been #1 on the US college radio charts for the last 4 weeks. I mean, that's blowing up. And last year, earlier this year, it was released. No, it was released last year. It was the last Toots and the Maytals album. Again, Toots unfortunately died tragically at his launch party for the album in Jamaica.
But it's like Tommy Cooper going on stage, isn't it? I suppose.
I was talking about people last night because when I grew up in Slough, outside the Slough cinema, the Slough was just a big building site in those days. So just building it, so there's a new town. But outside the old cinema where I go for Saturday morning movies was a joke shop that was run by Tommy Cooper's twin brothers. And he'd wear the fez. So we'd come out of the cinema, jokes from him, give us a routine. It was amazing. I love Tommy Cooper. I mean, comedy, I think, and black comedy as what's got me through a lot of my biggest hurdles. Killing Joke, I think we got the name from, although it's debated by the other members of the band, but I'm pretty sure we got it from a Monty Python episode called The Killing Joke. And Monty Python sums it up as now, I think everything's a miracle. I can't believe anything works to consider how I know. So I think you gotta laugh at it. But I think there's a profound, sublime beauty to it all as well. In our mistakes, in our frailty, in humanness, and that's one of the reasons I love being a producer. I love working with people, getting to know people, working with artists, encouraging them with their mistakes, really.
Okay. So here's the thing. What's clear to me is that you're similar to me in a lot of respects, in as much as you don't do things necessarily for to be perceived as successful in commercial terms. However, you're not averse to doing that because it helps you pay for your passion projects that clearly are going to lose money, possibly even. And the question is, what I suppose I know what the answer is, but I'd like to hear you talk about it. When I got to the age of 50, I committed to doing something creative every day because I realized I did an audit of my life and realized that being creative was what really made my life worth living. And I think you're a similar kind of person by the sound of it. Would you regard that to be the case?
Absolutely. I mean, my epiphany was going to India, really. And but I realized, that's a weird thing, time, isn't it? Because actually, when I spent 10 years and I had a house in India, but when I was in India, I'd never do any work, but I do a lot of hanging out. And then I come back and work 6 months in London every day, solid. I could be quite polarized in my personality, but yeah, certainly it's to be aware of your mortal coil and the opportunities you have while you're in this, flesh and body existence, is really important. And as you get older, you realize how much time you wasted just through insecurity and not having the confidence to jump in. As you get older, that's what we do as producers. We give the artist the confidence to jump in off the cliff and be fearless. And we recognize that's where the magic is. That's where the fifth is. And we become confident about and not afraid about jumping into that abyss as well. But nevertheless, every day I wake up and I'm confronted with the blank page, generally, whether it's a painting or a writing or piece of music. And in the mornings, I'm a sensitive cat. I can be like, God, it's either a cup of coffee or the noose, And then I'll look at the painting and I go, actually, that bit's not bad, And then I put a bit of music. I go, actually, that chorus is really good. And then I'll have another coffee and do a bit more, and and that's how it starts. And people don't realize that's what artists face every day. Generally, the ones that really understand it, because they understand their own failings and insignificance. Even though we may have made some classic timeless pieces of work, but the next day all the rules have changed, everything's, and we're back at that square one, looking at the blank page.
Yes, I'm always saying to people, particularly young artists, because I do a bit of teaching as well, is do be true to yourself, treat yourself, give yourself some self-respect as an artist, and go trust your intuition. If you think it's good, then there's a good chance somebody else will think it's good. And if you think it's good and nobody else thinks it's good, you should change direction, because you've got to do stuff, document it, make a piece of art, whatever it is, music, poetry, painting, photography, move on, because you're a different person every day. That's what I'm saying to him. And that's why I ended up, I've told this story before, but working with somebody like Green Gartside, who I regard to be a genius.
Yeah.
But he can't let stuff go. He can't. He work on them for years and revise and revise and revise. And you ended up with something that felt a bit overwrought and a bit kind of ironed out,
Well, it depends on
roughness.
my view is, and the great thing with music and art is it doesn't lie. It is what it is. So if it sounds over considered, it is. And if it sounds raw and visceral, then it is. We can play around with that a bit, but essentially it's a mirror of what's going on. And but I think the most important thing is to learn how to love yourself. The problem is you've got that paradox between becoming self-obsessed narcissist that all and someone who's self-loathing and hates everything they do, and somehow you've got to find a place in the middle.
The worst part, the worst combination is a self-loathing narcissist.
Well, guys, that's
mainly what we got in Parliament now,
And all introverts are extroverts, and all extroverts are introverts. There's two sides to every coin, isn't there? But I think in like the Tibetan Buddhists would say, it's about the annihilation of the false ego, and sometimes that's the narcissist side of it. You have to rebalance that out with getting your hands dirty, helping people out on a very real level, and bring yourself back down to earth a bit, and just get on with being helpful, and sometimes the genius comes through the back door. It's a very hard one to unpack, isn't it? But essentially, you've got to find balance and equilibrium. That enables you to get up on a stage and have the zuzz to do that, but also to be able to have some objectivity and some kind of perspective on it as a piece of art, rather than just a splurge of self-expression. So all of those can be equally valid and not valid as well. So I mean, they're just, whatever rules you construct, you're going to have to dismantle and destroy, you know. But again, you know, I like that Dionysian thing, you know, of create, destroy to create, you know. And sometimes burning a studio down, like Lee Perry is probably my biggest influence, is the most creative thing you can do, even though it seems absolutely crazy. And likewise, some of the records I've made that universally have been loathed by everyone, they are some of the best ones I've ever made, you know. So it's like a poem. You can't really validate a poem until it's been out there for 15 years, you know.
Yeah.
Sure.
Yeah.
The important thing is to just do it anyway, get it out, and as you say, move on to the next one, and don't get too bogged down with it. Obviously, there's the balance, because like, if you're going to do a symphony, you're not going to knock that out in a couple of days.
No, exactly.
I find it's good to have a lot of different wheels spinning in different ways,
Yes.
and diversity is what keeps me fresh. Every day I'm doing something different, especially these days. You're not in the studio with the same artist for 3 weeks. Yeah, you can really chop it around. In Spain, I was doing 2 hours on this, a couple of hours on that, and the dynamic and diversity will keep it fresh. And you know, I thought that's something I encourage a lot of artists to do, is just do it. Yeah,
Yeah.
the artist is very good at avoidance, and I've become very attuned to very sophisticated avoidance techniques they made, which winning perfectionism, you know,
Yeah.
and details. And you know, part of my philosophy with that is, I think I have to be challenging to the artist in that way as their producer. And so I'll gently but insistently call that as it comes, and address it as it happens, and challenge it, you know, with as much tact and diplomacy as I can muster. You know, I think that's probably my best asset, is being a challenging producer, rather than just a producer who goes, yeah, I love it, darling, move on. You know, it's you have to build up an authentic trust with the art, and that comes from you being real and not patronizing, you know. But again, it's a fine line, very slim and tender fine line.
Yeah. So have you ever fallen out with an artist that you produce?
Oh, definitely. I've learned. I've got better at it. So one of my big regrets, but also one of my big reliefs, is that I was spent almost 2 years, a year and a half, on a spiritualized album. The first day we started, Jason brought in a 15-minute track, and by the end, we got it down to 7 tracks. We're just doing the final tweaks, and he was a master of avoidance, and he just didn't want to finish. And I walked in, and it had gone back to being a 15-minute track, and he got the engineer to. I was like, oh my God, I'm gonna have to do another 2 years of this, and he had feeling I was pushing him too hard. I mean, another one was Axl Rose. I was involved with, you know, Chinese Democracy, that took 10 years. I didn't do 10 years. I did about, I don't know, 10 months, mainly writing, actually, and getting him singing again. But I knew that was going to roll on for years. In the end, I pushed him to record, and he walked away from that as well. And Roy Thomas Baker ended up doing like 5 years after me.
Shit.
I know. And those
People don't see this stuff, do they? They just see the end product. Yeah, that's the thing.
people would think, oh, how indulgent of Axel, for he's lost the plot because, you know, he spent £10 million, 10 years making the record. Who'd ever do that? And I thought, he's the biggest selling rock star in history. They've sold 170 million records. You know, how many Hollywood blockbusters that cost 200 million a year, and you know, come out every year, at least half a dozen.
Yeah.
And people never, what a waste of money, how outrageous and obscene it is they spend that money on a duff movie. But seriously, spend 10 million on an album. They were like, oh, it's disgusting. I thought it was an unbelievable. And I thought, well, it was a great album, actually. It did really well, made a lot of money. And he was really pushing the threshold as an artist. I mean, I know he's back in the original lineup and they're back doing what everybody loves them for as the rock and roll band. But he was trying to bring electronic. He was trying to push the threshold. He got crucified for it. A lot of artists will, you know. I mean, once you've established as a kind of a template, there's a lot of pressure from the industry and the public to continue that. But it's the artists that are brave enough to break that and destroy it. As we're talking, the destroy, create, Dionysian thing. Bowie's the master of that, wasn't he? I mean,
Yeah.
Eno's the master of that. Those are that fearless courage goes so far, and they become the pinnacle artists, really.
Absolutely. That was a brilliant exposition that you just went through there. I'm glad we got that on tape. All right, we're coming to the end now. It's just flown by. But I always ask, as you probably know, if you ever heard any of these like daft kind of your favorite things type questions at the end, which are daft in one sense, but in another sense, they're incredibly revealing. And it enables people who listen to the podcast to go, I had no idea it's that kind of person, you know, and no idea that was his favorite film or whatever it is. And they go down a rabbit hole, you know, and then they find out for themselves. So, yeah. Anyway, so what's your favorite book?
A favorite book? Oh, these are terrible, these risks, aren't they? I mean, there's at least 20 favorite books I've got.
One of them, just one of them. It didn't have to be absolute. Say that again. Sorry, I missed that.
The Count of Monte Cristo.
Brilliant.
Engaged me with that, and I only read that first time about 10 years ago. Blew me away. But Outsider, Colin Wilson, mind blowing. Be Here Now, Ram Dass. I don't know. I mean, everything from Kez, Clockwork Orange, Burgess, to Lord of the Rings trilogy, to Herman Hesse, all the Herman Hesse books. I mean, all those, Isabel Allende, Murakami now for fiction.
Yes, yeah.
I read a lot. Dylan Thomas, poetry for poets, Ginsberg. I'm doing a massive project for the Ginsberg Institute at the moment. So I've been reading a lot of Ginsberg, and all roads lead back to Ginsberg in a way, and then via his lens back to Kerouac, and I just love that stream of consciousness.
Yeah. Okay, favorite film.
Favorite films, okay. Again, is very dynamic. I mean, Gloria Swanson's Sunset Boulevard. Watch that. What an amazing film. The original Blade Runner.
Yes.
Great. Some great Apocalypse Now. I mean, all the Kubrick. I'm a total Kubrick.
Me too.
But also, I love, Seventh Seal. I love noir. I've been reading a lot of Raymond Chandler in lockdown, and so that, The Big Sleep, things like that. I love things that create otherworldly things you can disappear into. I like a good thriller. I like a good doco movie. I mean, so many. I love all the Sergio Leone, Morricone movies. I mean, so much.
So much, yeah. TV could be a box set, could be old, new, doesn't matter.
TV, yeah. I mean, I love all the classic ones we grew up with, like 40 Towers, Porridge, comedy. But these days, it's more Netflix box sets. I really got into Spiral, French one. I quite like foreign language box sets TV. Spiral, French crime thriller killer. Possibly my favorite of the last few years, next to Breaking Bad, which was just off the scale genius. was Gomorrah, the Italian mafia.
Oh yeah, that was really good. Yeah.
And the soundtrack's got to be great as well. I love that. I kind of got really into zombie movies as well in lockdown. So I was really Black Pine, all the classic zombie ones. Walking Dead. Was it?
Night of the Living Dead and all that stuff.
Yeah,
Original.
yeah. And the last one they did, the Army of the Dead, was such an.
Oh
I quite
yeah.
enjoyed that as well.
Bonkers. Yeah.
But yeah, I liked. I just watched Quarantine 2 the other day. That's pretty good. I mean, real trashy pulp zombie. I love that, and I kind of like trashy TV. I like trashy radio sometimes, just as a noise, not for long. But I can't, I can. I have to watch myself with TV because I can get quite locked into it and be watching how it's made, or you know.
Four in a bed. Yeah.
Yeah, I don't watch TV in bed or anything, but I don't have a TV in Spain where I spend a lot of time, so it's only movies there or a little bit on the laptop. But yeah, I'll avoid a bit of TV. But I must.
So yeah. So visual artist or conceptual artist?
Oh God, I mean, these are all long evening conversations. I mean, Cy Twombly,
Yeah, got to do.
all the abstract expressionists, Warhol, contemporary, more Billy Childish, Peter Doig, painters I love, Van Gogh. I mean, Delacroix, Goya. I do a lot of drawing, so I'm also into Mobius,
Right.
Crumb, 60s counterculture, Freak Brothers. Who's the Victorian sort of deco one? Possibly my favorite. Oscar Wilde era.
Not the pre-Raphaelite Brotherhood, that stuff. No.
Yeah, that.
Lord Leighton, not.
Yeah, around that time, but he did the Yellow Book. And his name escapes me. Helmut Newton, photographer. I mean, photography as well, massive.
Me too.
And
Yeah. Okay. Moving on. Do you have any unfulfilled ambitions?
how many? I mean, hundreds with music. I mean, the amount of people I still love to work with. Let's just start with Jimmy Cliff and go all the way to Dylan, And then I've got huge ambitions for symphonic music, folk music. I've got my first debut solo album coming out in November, which is kind of psychedelic folk pop. I've got huge ambitions with my drawing, with books. I've just started writing books. Huge ambitions with painting and directing films. I feel like I've just started.
So many people say, "Oh, I'm not an ambitious person." I'm going, they've all been fucking successful. They must have had some ambition. That depends how you define it. But
I'm very ambitious. I reach for the stars. I mean, even though I never quite make it, I might graze it.
yeah. Okay, final question. What's your favorite synth?
Oh, OBX, probably. MS-20.
Yeah, I love that. MS-20.
Really? Just put the kettle on. I'll come in. I'm just wrapping up the podcast. 2 seconds. Sorry. Good timing, Ash. I've just got a meeting.
All right. Well, this has been an absolute pleasure, and thank you so much for doing it. And you're a bundle of creative energy that is a fantastic example for young people, I think. And God bless you. I hope all your projects come to fruition.
Well, that's so kind of you to say, and I feel the same about you, and it's a great honor to do it for you. Thanks for asking. Now,
Thanks, mate. I really appreciate it. So I will see you, hopefully, in the flesh at some point. That'd be nice, wouldn't it?
Yeah.
And let's get together at some point.
Yeah, great.
All right, man.
Enjoyed it. Thanks.
Thank you.
All right.
Bye.